Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast, the podcast with the most cosmopolitan, beautiful, and elite Catholic terrestrial audience and a 10x heavenly audience. How are you doing, Laura Heeman?
X.
Doing
good, Clark Massey.
Good. All right. Today we'll have a little bit of housekeeping, and then Laura will explain to you the Manosphere, all the cringeworthy elements, and maybe any good points they have to make. Then we're going to go into a reflection on the way warfare is changing in the Ukraine war and the weird levels of defense spending we have as Americans. As you know, on this podcast, we're always trying to raise vampire awareness. It's one of the social concerns we have. And I said something wrong, some misinformation in the last podcast. Apparently, it is old German lore that vampires are OCD counters. I thought I kind of discredited that in the last podcast. So, like, if you are being chased by a vampire, dropping something that they have to count might be a strategy.
Okay.
I would consider this like a grizzly bear strategy, where it's like when they tell you that if a grizzly bear is attacking you to get down into a ball, it's like, has this ever really been tested scientifically? Did we ever put 100 people in front of grizzly bears rolled into balls and see if this works? You know, probably not, right? But like, if a vampire is chasing you, you don't have a lot of options. They're way faster than you. You might as well try this. That's the way I view this. Okay. We've also launched a new investigation. As you know, Uber Eats is a controlled entity by the vampires. And Insomnia Cookies is now under investigation. They might be a bait operation. And last but not least, I also found out from our official Catholic source of vampire knowledge that vampires have been across the globe for many millennia, and Chinese vampires are called hoppers. So if you see a vampire in your neighborhood hopping, it is probably Chinese. I'll do more digging into that. I'm wondering if Chinese vampires only eat Chinese people or if they're a danger to us all. All right. Housekeeping is over, and we have one more piece of housekeeping. We have a new editor of the podcast. Ben is still here. Ben is still going to be participating, but we now have Kelly. Welcome, Kelly, to the podcast.
Thank you, Kelly.
+1 listeners. We get our listeners the hard way. We just add editors. All right, Laura, take us into the Manosphere.
Right. I will. The Manosphere is a corner of the online world. Maybe how big is this corner? It's hard to tell. But the Manosphere is telling men that they ought to be men and can be men, and it's allowed to be men. And I think by this it's meant like a certain type of man, like a man that is strong and virile and wants to win and can get girls and make babies and all kinds of dangerous messages like that. I don't know if the Harrison Butker speech spurred this conversation that you and I were having about the Manosphere. There is also like 3.5-part series that Emily Stinson Chapman wrote on her Substack about the Manosphere that I think she describes herself as a very online person. And if you are a very online person and are dealing with these ideas, I think she writes some good rebuttals to some of the problems of the Manosphere. But why are we talking about the Manosphere? You and I would say like it's a force and maybe there's a reaction, like a pendulum swing, and it is having some influence on young men. And there's, I think sometimes the Manosphere is sort of dismissed as misogynist and weird, and I think you and I think it's both. That it would be wrong to dismiss the Manosphere just by pointing out the ugly, because there is a criticism in the Manosphere that is important.
Can I kind of characterize it a little bit differently? I guess so. It's not really an ideology, and it's not really a set way of thinking. It's much more like a galaxy of like internet influencers and creators who have these followings, and they kind of go into little subgroups within the Manosphere. And I'd say broadly, they're part of this new kind of like right-wing reaction. I'll even hear other guys who are more like, say, a libertarian critic or a Jordan Peterson type person who will refer to these other influencers as Manosphere, or we could talk about subparts of the Manosphere, but it's not so much like, hey, here's a new ideology.
The Manosphere ideology, right?
It's not really that. It's much more just like there's a lot of people going viral with these messages. And it's influencing people. So do you want to try to like describe the frontier of it?
So rather than being a specific ideology, it's like, I think the word galaxy is good. Like it's like a galaxy of reactions. And I think that sometimes the media will portray some of the parts that are very ugly. And I think this is true with like a lot of political and social things. Like you kind of get like an ugly tip of the iceberg. And I think that understanding the context of where some of these ugly ideas are coming from is really important. So
I also think the ugly is on purpose. Like, I think we need to actually talk about like different types of Manosphere influencers, but like, I think that a lot of them are using like a shockingly ugly front to get your attention. It's like the hook. So it's like, there's this cringe element. And I think what Laura's saying in many ways is like, this is kind of cringe.
Yeah.
Don't completely dismiss it as kind of cringe. One, because it's real and it's going to be influencing young people around you. And two, because maybe they are making a valid point in all that cringe. All right.
I think this is true of lots of things, not just the Manosphere. It's like, we need to understand the context of where these little movements are.
Right.
Coming from to actually understand what is going on in our culture, And I think to understand like what the Manosphere is, we identified some groups of the Manosphere, and we're calling them, the first group would be like the players, and this is like Andrew Tate and succeed and get a lot of women, and this is like the road to like manliness, and the women should be more what's the word? Like there should be a subjugation there. And
I think you're right. By the way, this isn't even our category. Like they actually are referred to as the player bros.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are these different, and Andrew Tate's one of them, and it is kind of this, like, they're not really like wanting to bring back gentlemanliness or open doors for women. They're actually players, and it's not a very attractive part of the Manosphere.
It's a gross part of the Manosphere. Yeah.
All right. What are the other parts, Laura?
Okay. We have the incels, who are the involuntarily celibate. And I think this is also a kind of weird part of the Manosphere. And it's kind of guys who somehow are not succeeding in life or with women, and there's a sort of bitterness there. And how much of that is attention grabbing and how much is real. Sometimes I think that line doesn't matter as much. But
the thread they're going down is they're sometimes associated with 4chan, but they're kind of going down this idea that we've gotten rid of monogamy, we've gotten rid of marriage, and so there's these player bros who are like, all the women are kind of going to the player bros, and then there's this broad bottom of men who can't get a date, and they're bitter, and they're kind of bitter because like society's no longer making sense in a sense. Like it can't be that each player bro has 10 girlfriends and then these guys have 0. There's something that doesn't make sense about that. And it's also cringe because you're like, it's not like you can like, better yourself and like, get a date, dude. Don't just complain about the system.
Yeah. And then maybe the part that is more relevant to us and many of our listeners would be sort of the gentlemanly part of the Manosphere. And this is probably where a lot of Catholic Christian guys would fall into. And I think there's a lot of positive in here. But yes, just wanting to go back to gentlemanliness and a certain part of masculinity that maybe we've ignored as a culture, and gender roles, and
I associate this with the Art of Manliness podcast. I've seen people promote like camps for teaching boys how to be men, and then there's a bunch of photos of them out there,
like bow and arrows, bows
bow
and
and arrows,
arrow.
and they're wearing like Carhartt gear that has like no, it
Never
looks
been
brand
used.
new.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of is cringy a little bit for two reasons. One, they get to medieval weapons really quickly. They have to figure out a reason why a broadsword needs to be part of the Manosphere. You know, like part of being a man.
There's a very stylized thing about it. Yeah.
And it's also like the men who I've like respected in my life, you know, always had an oil stain on their, you know, jeans, or, you know, like they were wearing out their work clothes, you know, and this is kind of like, hey, you know, we're weekend warrior men. A little bit, right? Yeah. And so there's also this interesting thing where I think that they're trying to bring back chivalry. Like they'll often even say that. And chivalry is not really Catholic, but there's a lot of Catholics in this movement. Yeah. This is one of my most controversial takes.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church was very at war with chivalry for a long time. And like, if you read like the autobiography of Ignatius Loyola, he like converts from chivalry.
Yeah.
Right. He would have called it the, what would he call it? Not the romantic love movement, but he would have called it the courtly love, you know? Mm-hmm. So there is this sense in which there's like not a great message of manhood within the gentlemanly movement either.
Yeah.
But are they all... So that's 3. Is there another one?
The hustle bros, like you can achieve, you can compete, you can succeed.
Yeah, be aggressive, step on the head of your enemy, climb that ladder. I think we just listed them in order of most cringeworthy to least cringeworthy.
Yeah, maybe. I think that might be right.
Right. All right. Maybe the hustle bros are more cringy than the gentlemanly movement.
I don't know.
You could swap them.
You kind of wish some of the gentlemen would listen to the hustle bros a little bit, and the hustle bros would listen to the gentlemen a little bit. But yeah.
Okay. Where's all this come from, Laura?
That a lot of the energy for this comes from 2 overarching causes, ideas, or whatever. One is that we, I think, rightly identified that women were not, you know, participating in society to the full extent of men. And we spent a lot of energy trying to advance women. And this has come, there have been some wins here that are like good wins for humanity, but it's also come at the detriment of like families and young men. In some of the ways this has been like promoted. And I think we have a lot of young men that feel like they've been left behind, and we have a weird phenomenon right now of we have these women that are out earning, more educated, etc., than the current like man dating pool, and they feel like there's no one for them to like date or get married to. And then the second, like overarching cause, I would say, is that as a society, we've moved kind of to a place where we've rejected masculinity as a negative force overall. And, I would say like in a healthy society, you're tempering the competition and the aggression at some level, right? Because we can't just like be in fight mode all the time. But there's just we've said as a society that any kind of competitive or manly drive is predatory or dangerous or ugly or whatever.
And I would maybe summarize this to say, obligatorily, I will say women are absolutely necessary for humanity, for civilization, for your quality of life, for everything about it, right? But there's a certain masculine thing that like helps start up civilization, you know? And there's also a certain masculine tendency to tear down civilization. And probably the end of our civilization will be men tearing it down, and the next civilization will be men setting it up. But civilization by its very nature needs to temper masculinity. It can't have a bunch of it has to somehow redirection it a little bit to kind of make civilization work, right? And maybe that's obvious, maybe that's not, but I don't
know. I think like there's this like Jordan Peterson idea that bothers people. It's like you got to be a monster, but then you have to like subordinate the monster in you, to
civilize it. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. But you don't want to actually kill the monster. Like you need to be able to access the monster when it's time to fight for something right or true or just or whatever, and some people sort of, civilize the monster within themselves better than others. And maybe for those who don't, civilization is, like civil society helps you do that.
So what the manosphere might be a reaction to is civilization going too far. Meaning like we tried to stamp out the masculinity and now we have a counter reaction.
Yeah.
And I think something you said that was insightful to me is like, you're trying to characterize the 90s as a time when we told women they needed to be more masculine in order to like succeed in the workforce. And in the last decade, it feels like we've changed the message to we need to feminize the economy. And men aren't allowed to have those like ultra competitive realms.
Right. Right.
And that's just all toxic masculinity, but really they're almost saying that all masculinity is toxic. They want to redefine masculinity, which is an overstep. In a sense, like the manosphere might be reacting to what we just characterized, but what are they doing that's so viral? Like if we were to say they're creating content that's having influence, what is that content?
I think a lot of the viral content can be a little bit ugly, and it's kind of these like gotcha moments where it's like, see, look how stupid our culture is, or see, look how stupid this woman is who, thought she could be like this ultra feminist, whatever. And look how much her life sucks, and this is what you get.
And two obvious things that we've seen go viral a lot is, women who are maybe unmarried, in their 40s, they're still like very, with it. They're very successful in every way. They're so attractive and things like this, but life has somehow not worked out the way they thought it would. Like they bought into something that just didn't pan out. They had a lot of serial monogamy, but didn't really value marriage enough. And now they're like ready for that in their minds, but it's not working out. Right. Well, then you see the manosphere culture is picking up on these like essentially confessionals of these women and like kind of dunking on them, saying, look, yeah, you're promoting lies. You bought into lies. You did this to yourself type thing. And then you also see them kind of dunking on younger women who are currently kind of living a more, I'd say, they're promoting feminism and living a promiscuous lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. And they're kind of like trying to shock these women also, and in a way they're using shame. I also think they're kind of like making fun of microaggressions. Like everyone's so concerned about like a pronoun. Well, these guys are actually going to slam you with like a bunch of even just statistics on why you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. Why your worldview is stupid. Yeah.
And I have to say, to their credit, they're not dunking on people who are like crying and repentant. They're dunking on people who are still promoting that worldview.
I don't know. I think
it's not much to their credit, by the way, but like,
it's not much to their credit. And I feel like,
but like, it's clearly wrong to shame someone who's repentant. Right?
So I think it's clearly wrong to shame someone.
Okay, that's where we want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about this very broadly. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a natural level of shame, right? That hopefully is just in you naturally, right? Like don't be naked, Well,
some contexts are okay for being naked. JP2 would say. So
you're right. That's fine.
Yeah.
You don't mean the beach, but you mean like within marriage and things like this.
No, I mean at the doctor's office and at the beach, it's appropriate to be partially naked, So
I don't know that it's wrong that I have a little bit of shame at the doctor's office.
You're not doing something shameful by being partially naked, but
I'm not really doing anything wrong. But the fact that I have a tinge of shame in that moment, I don't think is like.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to weed that out of my personality. You know?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think that is like your kind of natural, internal, intact shame. Yeah.
But I'm not trying to like also go to a topless beach or something like this. You know, that seems inappropriate. But all right, so shame at a natural level, we're both for. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think right. So I think that shame is like an internal movement, you know, with, you know, like shame comes from inside, and it's like something like your body or a motivation or something that is kind of meant to be somewhat private is like revealed, and there's like, you feel like there's a violation. And I think this is a little bit from JP too. And I think the other thing that shame kind of tells you is when you use yourself or somebody is using yourself to like for like a value that's like less than the full dignity of the human person. So if like you put your sexual value forefront before your dignity as a person, like, and your shame is sort of intact and ordered, you would feel some shame there.
Right. And the only thing that's kind of interesting, if we were to go another layer theologically, it would be like JP2 uses the old Desert Father story of like the two monks who are walking and they see a naked prostitute, and one of them like averts his eyes and one of them looks at her, you know, and then they converse later and he goes, "Why didn't you avert your eyes?" And he goes, almost because like the nakedness is not bad, the beauty is not bad. It's like once you've healed your sexuality, there actually wouldn't be shame in a way. Shame's kind of a product of the fall, like the nakedness shame.
Yeah, well, I think.
And having said that, don't try this at home. You know what I mean? Like, don't it's not like a prescription.
No, but
of
I
getting
think,
rid of shame. But yeah,
right. No, I think we need the shame, and we're not just trying to heal it out of ourselves, because the shame is kind of like the safeguard. Like shame is like a safeguard that helps you, you know, kind of value yourself correctly and know if you are being violated or violating yourself. So you don't want to get rid of the shame. And I think like the way John Paul II talks about it, it's like in a healthy marriage, the shame isn't eliminated, it's like absorbed into the love. Because it's like an important feature of being a person. But there's like a difference between shame and shaming someone.
Let's go to the next phase. So we just had a discussion of natural shame, right? Or shame that's just in you, right? There's also social shame, right? And this doesn't have to be targeted on the individual, but it will be felt by individuals. So it could be everything from like, I remember with the whole COVID thing, I was an early masker and an early unmasker. And when I was an early masker, I felt shame because I'm at Home Depot wearing a mask and no one else is wearing a mask and I feel stupid. And then when I wanted to quit wearing the mask, I also felt stupid. Yeah. Because like society around me is doing the opposite of whatever I'm trying to do here, you know?
Yeah.
And also, you know, the great Father Adam, influencer of the podcast, he has this talk called Don't Be a Loser. And part of that is telling you, hey man, don't be a loser. It's kind of shameful to be a loser. And then he gives you these like core ideas to not be a loser. But could you imagine a priest standing up and saying, you know, at Sunday Mass, you know, let's say no one's in the problem, but he just says, hey, it's shameful to say live together before marriage, right? And so he's promoting a social shame. He's kind of programming people to feel like it's shameful, but he's not singling anyone out. He's just saying it generally.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think maybe
is that wrong or is that?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. So I want to point out with the social shame, the example that you gave, you're actually there more afraid of social repercussions or the social cost of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask than actually like, I think, are you doing something right or wrong? And when we have people worried about the social shame, especially here in DC, you got people wearing masks still. You know, like people wear masks for 2 more years than we thought needed to be done because of this kind of social messaging, you know? And so I think I think that's a negative. But
are you saying it's all negative, or are you just giving an example when it's negative? Because it's not interesting to give an example. It's interesting if you're making the point that all social shame is negative.
I think what we are missing now, and so by the way, just to bring this back to the Manosphere, I think the Manosphere thinks that we need to bring shame back, and people need to feel ashamed of like the stupid things they're doing that are having negative, repercussions. And meanwhile, on like, we've got like shout your abortion, and like a rejection of shame as useful or valuable. Like, I think there's people insisting that shame is the patriarchy trying to, or religious people trying to. I think what we are missing is not that is positive, is not cultural shame, but an idea of like a sort of understood right and wrong, and an idea that you can look at the consequences of your actions and decide if they were good or bad, and that's not an attack on a person.
I think what you're saying is very unrealistic. And what I mean by that is like, there's always like things in the natural world that build on the more kind of like fundamental truths. Like if you cheat at business, it's also good that you go bankrupt. So to me, to tell someone don't cheat at business, yeah, I can call them to the higher level of like, the moral beauty of not cheating. Or I can also say this will end up hurting your business, right? And I think social shame is working the same way. It's like, yeah, I should call you on to purity and the highest forms of sexuality, but also if you're not going to do it, you're going to have some consequences in this life too, of which there is shame.
Okay, like it's like you could call a young woman on to purity and behaving in an appropriately modest way and whatever, right? I think we have a problem where it's like you're not allowed to say, going to this frat party, getting drunk with all these people you don't know in an outfit that is gives a person access to your body, more easily, and then walking home by yourself is a questionable idea. Like you're not allowed to say that, and that's like you're not even allowed to state the consequences because it's like victim blaming.
I agree with you, but I'm kind of having a problem connecting this to social shame.
Okay, so there's a higher idea of like you want to like treat yourself with honor and respect and honor like the dignity that God the Father has given and imparted, and this whole gift, right? Like that's like the higher idea. But then a lower idea is like if you don't honor that, like you are at some level putting yourself in danger,
right?
And there could be a consequence, and that I'm not taking away culpability from someone that would, but so that is like a lower idea,
I'm for that. Like it's
okay.
Like to
but
really
that's not social shame. That's like
no, it can be social shame. What you mentioned was a way it wasn't, and that's fine and that's real. Like you're actually endangering yourself. That's a real consequence that has nothing to do with shame, right? Embarrassment though, and like by the way, so to really big picture this, it's like, some people become Catholic and Christian and love God because they literally just love the goodness in God, and some people are afraid of hell.
Yeah.
Okay. And some people, frankly, are going to church on Sunday because of social norms, not because they're afraid of hell, right? I don't think those social norms are bad. And I think by throwing out this like idea that there's cultural and social norms that you'd be embarrassed to flaunt, I think is weirdly unnatural. It's a thought experiment more than anything real. And I don't know that we shouldn't construct certain social norms that use shame, that keep people more safe, more healthy, and more moral. I don't think that's wrong. I don't want it to be overdone. I'm not like be embarrassed if you're not wearing a burqa or something, but like, I think there is a level that we can promote social norms that people will feel shame when they flaunt. That is not wrong. And if the Manosphere is bringing that back a little bit, they're not wrong either. If they're doing it to the point it's ridiculous, they're stupid. But yeah. And then we have to go to personal shame, where you actually like just take someone one-on-one and shame them, because that's the most controversial
the
part,
yuckiest
right?
part of the manosphere.
But so there's natural shame, social shame, and then personal. So are you against social?
Okay, I think we're not allowed to say what is right and wrong right now, and we're not allowed to say anything that's common sense that could potentially sound like victim blaming, and I think that's like foolish, and it's not helpful, and it's not good for building society, Say a young woman at the church gets pregnant out of wedlock, and it's like there's the older woman that is like moved with pity and compassion and all that, and tries to help that person lovingly, and might be giving this person also some guidance, that is good, right? Like, I think you want to be that person rather than the whisperer in the back, can you believe?
Right.
And
we have to ask, what would Jesus do? But that's once again like a personal shame.
yes,
situation,
but
not social.
I think there's I don't think you can build society on something that you don't want to happen in the individual heart of a man,
I think it's all a scale in a way. Like let's take it out of the sexual realm, because somehow that always confuses things. Let's make it like, could we do the same arguments about standing in line, right? Like there's certain cultures that don't stand in line, right? And there's certain cultures that do stand in line, right? And if I were to take you and cut you into line, you might feel embarrassed and shame, and not because there's some moral question in some absolute, but also because there's a social shame element, right? And I think that's fine and good, and it reinforces maybe a broader moral picture when done well, I think that by the way, I want to say this. If you pick up a social work book from the 50s, I did this once. I got a textbook from the 50s because it was written by a Catholic who I admired. And the standard social work textbooks in the 50s would call a single mother a sex criminal.
That's wild.
Because that was just the way they thought. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you're going to require the rest of society to fund your family because you can't do it on your own. You're going to need welfare and things like this. And therefore you are like a sex criminal. And the man was too. But they literally said in the textbook that we can't catch the male sex criminals in this act, but we know who the single mothers are. And now having said that, it didn't sound like they were demonizing or beating up these single moms, but it wasn't like the Scarlet Letter, but it was at the same time just using that term is a term that's so foreign to us, and I'm not saying I'm for bringing that back, but it was just wild how much that, I don't know, it was very shocking to read.
Yeah. I think that having like a societal norm or a societal code or something is the same thing as a structure of like shame or societal shame. And I think
the common use of the word shame applies to this, meaning like if you break with the structural norm or the social norm, you feel ashamed or embarrassed. And that's the common use of the word shame. So like, is it fundamentally different than say a shame that you'd have before God? Probably yes. But I do think like social shame is probably a positive, or rather, who cares if it's a positive? It just is, and you can't get rid of it. But maybe we could agree to disagree.
I think like COVID is a non-sexual example of where we created a whole crazy social shame structure that was very bad.
I think there's bad social shame. I just don't think there's a world without it. Like here's a question. Like if a priest, a pastor, bishop, priest, pope, whatever, promotes sexual morality in a way that reinforces some ideas that would actually make people more embarrassed if they broke them, is that wrong? Or should they only talk about it in a way that's so non-judgmental that they only use the very highest motivations?
I think saying plainly that something is right and wrong is great. I think when you are using it, I think there's a way that it's like people either become neurotic or they become apathetic or they become resentful when you are trying to say like You should feel this specific way.
I think what you just said is the great error that we are right now working through as a society. And what I mean by that is like, so there was this great moment in 60 Minutes where like they give him this loaded question to Pope Francis, and it's like, would a little girl growing up today, could they hope of being a deaconess or a priest in the Catholic Church?
Having leadership in the church, whatever.
And Pope Francis looks a little shocked and just says, no. And then there's like a pause. And then like, and that's the whole clip I saw. That's a weird, like, to me, that was a weird response, not because it's not true and not because I've seen so many spiritual leaders take a different tact where it's like, let me talk to you about the greatness of the women's vocation within the church, you know?
Well, so he does kind of then expound on that note. But see, I think he was doing something very important there. This interviewer is trying to bring up the feelings and everything as if that's going to have like a sway on the answer. And he's just like, no, that's not possible. And it's just like the right and correct answer. And he's taking the feeling manipulation out of it.
And my point is that it's shocking, it's abrupt, it's effective, right? And when we try to de-wire the, you know, like sexual context or any social context that has some shame attached to it, and we try to make it sound so that we're always calling people on and giving an absolutely full exposition, we're neither effective or successful or any whatever. You know, I think that's just like I think we've too much worried about people's feelings when saying these truths, and we've hurt these people. Because many people are going down the wrong road because we were too careful about how we phrased it.
Yeah, that's funny, and because I'm taking the opposite thing of that Pope Francis. Like I know
that's what I'm trying to say.
He was not careful, but it was like he wasn't dealing in the world of feelings. He took it out of there, and I feel like when you're trying to impose a shame structure, you are trying to manipulate people's feelings, and he's just like, no. This is not possible. And
right now, like if you sat down and said, look, most people find their happiness in family, and most people, and sexuality works best when it's this, and you could give them statistics. You don't even have to go into feelings, you know. That would be an affront to most people.
If you said children need a mother and a father.
That's an affront statement.
Right.
Right. And it also means that if you don't have that, you should feel some shame, I guess, but not really. It's just a fact, right?
Well, it's just a fact, and where your inner world and maybe how you're living could be affronted by that fact, could affirm that fact, could want to rebel against that fact, but it's just saying a fact.
But that's kind of what the Manosphere is doing a lot, is they're taking someone who's fairly naive and they're slamming them with facts, and they're not like saying, I hate you, or, you know, they're not like using these obvious shame tactics.
They're enjoying sometimes watching these people drown, you know.
Oh, yes, this is true. I mean, yeah, there is this satisfaction in watching the facts hit the reality. And maybe that is related to shame, you know. Can we move to the next thing, though?
Sure.
All right, so maybe we haven't clarified this, but the audience will have their own opinion on social shame. But now the personal shame. So Jesus does not, with the woman caught in the act of adultery, spend any time trying to make her feel worse.
He actually shields her from
people shaming her.
Shaming her, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or punishing her, rather. Mm-hmm. And also the woman at the well, he also is not there to make her feel worse than she already does.
And she leaves sort of joyfully saying, this man has told me everything I've done.
Right. It was actually a freeing moment from shame, in a way, right? I think that's right. And I think when the Manosphere transgresses and shames people like that, they are deeply wrong and deeply anti-Christian. I think when they promote social norms that would cause some shame, I don't know that that's true.
Don't look for this show if you don't know what it is.
You better not mention it then.
No. Okay. There's a podcast where
just know that Laura watches shameful things and reports. So you don't have to.
I I don't watch
Okay.
this on
Somebody
the
told you
regular.
about it?
Someone told me about it. No. I think it was like a thing that was like on my YouTube feed a few times, and I watched enough to say I don't want this in my life, which was not that much. The show will have it's like, I guess I don't even understand the show, like who is the real host and whatever, but it's like they'll have these like this host or two hosts, and they are very much in the manosphere, and then they have these sort of loose young women, and it's like the whole show is sort of set up to show how stupid they are, and it's like gross, because it's like you have these kind of like young broken women that are a little bit sad and dissatisfied, and you can tell some of them sense something is wrong in their life, and they're just getting dunked on. That's the format of the show. Occasionally, of these women, you get one of these women will be like kind of more, obviously a lot more intelligent, and then typically also seem like a little more hardened, and it's like a little bit harder for them to wake up some feeling of like, this is wrong in these women, and I think in Andre Louf, who wrote Tuning into Grace, which is an excellent book, he talks about how Jesus like treats, different people in the Bible, right? And one, like it's like the righteous religious person and the hardened sinner, and it's like kind of easy to pity like the broken, sad sinner, right? But then we have this idea of the hardened sinner, and Andre Louf thinks that we think there are a lot of hardened sinners, but there's actually like a lot of righteous religious people. But he's not sure that really there are, this idea that we have of the hardened sinner is really like that we have so many of those people, And I think when it's like there's this like instinct to want to like slam dunk on this person that is perceived to be a hardened sinner, and you think, well, like you need to shatter this, and to pretend that person is not a wounded, broken person, like the kind of young, sad girl, I think is like a little bit of a disconnect of a false thing.
And I think if you were with the person one-on-one and you like, poked around there to try to shatter it, that would be one thing. But when you're trying to create viral clips and make an economic benefit out of it, it's not positive. Yeah, it's yucky, right? All right, I'd like to throw out another idea here. Part of the Harrison Butker talk and this idea that you see in the mommy war is about women in the workforce. All right. Our idea of the stay-at-home mom right now is a certain idea. It's not actually a deeply traditional idea. And I'm going to talk about that. I'll explain what I mean by that. But it's a good thing. Like, it's a really good thing. And it's a thing that has not been given enough credit. And I don't fault Harrison Butker for promoting it, because I don't think as a whole we've ever given it enough credit, this idea of the stay-at-home mom, right? Having said that, is it like the way, or is it like, what is it actually, right? And my take is like the Industrial Revolution changed everything. That's been one of the themes of our podcast. But like, it used to be that the stay-at-home mom was not what you think of today. Like the 19th century stay-at-home mom had like a vegetable garden the size of an acre, was canning preserves every day, was literally making everyone's clothes.
Was constantly washing by hand.
Right. Yeah. My grandmother said the greatest invention in her lifetime was the washing machine.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most biggest labor-saving invention. And this is a woman who also had an acre of vegetable garden and canned everything, And this idea, essentially what all this stuff is a cottage industry, right? There was an enormous economic activity in the home run by the woman, And after the Industrial Revolution, and by the time you get the 1950s America, there's very little you can do at home that's truly economically beneficial. You know, if you're making your clothes, you can almost always buy them for cheaper than you can make them. You know, and if you could in any way hire yourself out even for minimum wage, it would almost always make sense to work for that than to create these things at home. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't make our own cheese, but making your own cheese is actually not financially putting your family ahead, you know, or helping your family survive in the economy. You know, it's a luxury, right? And right now, I think with stay-at-home moms, besides the, you know, it's in a sense like the old traditional stay-at-home mom that would have been in the Middle Ages, that would have been in the 19th century, that would have been in the Roman Empire, wasn't doing a lot of parenting. Wasn't there loving on the kids all day. Wasn't there creating a magical childhood. Wasn't educating the kids unless they were really upper class. That was like a luxury good. That luxury good is now far more available to the middle class than ever before, you know? But at the end of the day, it's still kind of a luxury good. Like if you took the median income of an American worker and said, Dad has that income, it's going to be very hard for that woman to stay home with those kids. You know, there's almost an economic necessity that she works. And you could blame the current economy on that. And I'm sympathetic with that because I think we've really mismanaged our economy. But it's also the historical norm that the woman did economically productive things besides just love the kids, make dinner, clean, keep the home. It was actually like an enormous cottage industry project, you know? So I think that there's a sense in which women in the workforce is just like, they've always been in the workforce. It just used to be they were in the cottage industry workforce, and now they're actually at the office. And the other, I think I said the other issue I have is, I think one of the ways traditional society was broken that these new liberal movements have been right to address is you don't want people trapped.
Yeah.
You know,
in like an abusive marriage or.
Right. If you're married to an addict or trapped in a way, you need a way out. You need a way to feed so that your kids don't starve if you get out, you know, and that's just a reality and we need to honor that. You know?
Yeah, and I think we might have talked about this in another episode, but like there are things that are like shockingly recent, like that a woman could get a credit card on her own is like a shockingly recent development, you know, like that a woman could get a loan or credit or whatever, you know, on her own. And
like if we all took like kind of the Saudi Arabian model of like women in the workforce, which is basically none. Don't even drive, basically. I think women recently got the right to drive in Saudi Arabia. If we took that model, our civilization would collapse.
Yeah.
So you have to like look that in the eye and say, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, and there will be mass starvation and there will be a complete catastrophe if that happens, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think a number of our podcasts have sort of culminated in this, and this is maybe an idea about the manospheres. Like there are helpful ideas in here, like don't let it become an ideology. And in like maybe the players and the Catholic gentlemen in the manosphere have this idea that they should have like a woman at home, you know, and I think for the Catholic gentlemen, you know, like there are a lot of good things about having a mom at home with the kids, but what it's like, you can't let it be an ideology because in every marriage you have to look at the reality of your situation, of like the man's income, of like the woman's personal talents and calling, you know, and it's just like a weird.
It is weird, but it's also weird to act like it's not a valid desire. You know, to have a family with a woman who stays home. So it's kind of like both ways.
Right. No, I do think it is both ways. And I have this German doctor that I love. And he is, you get the feeling that he like understands humanity, you know, when you talk to him, and he's like, it's good when a child under 3 is around the rhythms of the family, of their own family. Like there's like a stability there. And he's not kind of saying you need to give your child this magical childhood or whatever, but that there's like a positive for a child under 3 to be in the rhythms of their own family structure, and I like that. And I think that is like a value, right? Yeah. But
all right, I want to take this direction I didn't warn you about.
Oh, no. What about vampire children?
I don't think vampires are involved in this problem, but I'm open to that. If you got a pitch, let me have the pitch. But when I'm hanging out with like young adults, right, young Catholics who are unmarried, right, particularly the men, I'm seeing a resurgent interest in masculinity. You could say that's part of the Manosphere vibe or something, and that's okay. But I'm also seeing something that I think you'd find particularly shocking. I've literally been to young adult groups where there are guys there open carrying. I don't mean alcohol. I mean, like, literally, they have like a gun strapped to their waist and they're not hiding it, And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like at Home Depot in Texas or Home Depot in Kansas City. I can't remember, about like 20 years ago or something. And I was like, oh, that guy's just carrying a firearm in public, But now I see it and it doesn't cause as big a reaction in me. And apparently it's not causing a big reaction in these young adult groups. It's kind of interesting, right?
I think
I feel like in DC, this would be way weirder. Partly because it'd be illegal in DC.
Well, yeah, you can have a concealed carry Oh gosh.
But I don't think you can have open carry in the district.
No.
Yeah.
I think. To me, I think like polite society causes a lot of problems. But I heard someone bragging about all their guns, and I was like, let's go back to polite society, please. Like, I hate this. It's like a weird brag.
Gun talk is weird.
Yeah.
All right. Having said that, we should introduce a military section.
No, don't introduce a military section yet. Just with the ideological ideas about... and maybe like this warning that, if you have teenage or college age sons, they might be getting, I'm not in the dating world right now, so it's hard for me to understand like how influential some of the weird manosphere ideas are in the dating world. But I understand from several women that I know that there's like, men going into dates saying like, well, I will never marry someone that doesn't agree to be a stay-at-home wife always, or have like I'm looking for an Ephesians 5 woman who will obey her husband or whatever. Like that this is like a sort of weird thing in like Catholic dating. And has it always been, or is it right now?
All right. Some people are not going to think that's weird, Laura.
Well,
like that makes you
cringe. Is. Okay, that's fine.
Right. No, but I want to bring up, like, why is that not just a valid way of sorting out the dating pool? Like, if you don't want that type of guy, then don't take that type of guy. There are definitely women who want that type of guy, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of something mysterious in there that's a little bit like thou protest too much.
The women?
Like, and the men. Meaning, like, the women I found... This is now really old data from like a long time ago, but the people who make the biggest stink about the man being in charge, I find, are sometimes the most controlling people who are women. And I bet the same's true of men.
Oh, that's funny. The women are actually very
It's insecure men who are worried about that they can't be in charge that will be making the big fuss, right? Yeah. So I think there's I think there's a way that sorts out that doesn't end in like really weirdly like patriarchal situations.
The women that want patriarchal, I just think it's like there's some men are allowing this to become like ideological in a way that has never been vetted with like in conversation with normal women, and maybe it's only been vetted in conversation with these kind of. Has it been vetted in conversation with a woman? I don't know, but maybe it's these.
Well, clearly you get these like conversations where it's like a competition to see who's more traditional, and then you end up in a really weird spot when you've won that competition. But
I think another thing, I think that I meant to touch on earlier that we talked about kind of, and we referenced, these women that have like these advanced degrees and these big salaries and they find themselves unmarried is like, I think this is like the traditional manosphere people are like saying we have not raised women to become wives and mothers. And
I think that's interesting.
I think that's an interesting idea too. And I think part of the reason why I think that's interesting is because I feel like a lot of my peers, and maybe myself included, find themselves as a wife and mother and are like, oh, what am I doing? And maybe felt much more prepared for the career that they studied to have,
and you could flip it. We're not preparing men to be husbands and fathers either. And what's interesting about this, if you thought like, what is the majority of your life and your happiness going to be? It's probably going to be related to family and being a spouse and being a parent, right? That's the majority of it, right? But then if you raise your children telling them that the majority of it is your academic success and your success in the career force and maybe a political issue or something like that, then like, what are you saying? Are you saying that we just expect the whole parent spousal thing to take care of itself naturally? We don't have to prepare you for it. And I think that has created a weird issue. Like why wouldn't you prepare your kid for what's going to become the majority of their life?
Yeah. So I think there's a valid critique in that. And there's a thing that I love seeing, and I feel like in my Catholic community with big families, lots of age kids, it's like you'll see some of the little toddler girls playing with a baby doll, and then they lift up their shirt, and try to breastfeed the baby doll. You've never seen this? Okay. This happens. I'm sure your girls have done this.
Kelly.
No, this is good. I love this, and I think it's like good that like little girls are seeing like how to nurse a baby, because it's like nursing a baby is supposed to be a very natural thing that a lot of women my age have a lot of difficulty doing. And there's like there's like a thing that's like, I thought this was supposed to be natural, but I literally have no idea how to do this. And I think that's interesting.
You don't mean technically an idea, or do you mean like social shame about it?
No, I don't recall seeing a woman breastfeeding a child.
Right.
Ever.
Do you remember
And
that
because
thing?
a lot of women weren't breastfeeding children, like I remember my friends that had, maybe that had younger siblings, like maybe there was some breastfeeding happening behind closed doors, but I knew how to prepare formula. Like I knew how to do that from my childhood,
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the gun nut, moving on, the gun nut section of the podcast. All right. So I started investigating some interesting stuff that's coming out of Ukraine that could really reshape the world, like the way that the conflict is happening. And that somehow dovetailed into a budgetary analysis of the United States.
Yeah.
So I'll start with some budget things, because they're kind of wild. I hope everyone sees this as wild.
Yeah.
The U.S. spends as much in the Department of Defense budget as the rest of the world's Department of Defense budgets combined.
Wow.
Right? That's wild. Right?
Yeah.
And you have to ask, what are you getting for that, right? But then I realized that the Department of Defense budget was not actually the whole cost, that there's a separate intelligence agency budget. So if you want to include the NSA, CIA, and all the other forms of, intelligence and defense we have, now it's even bigger. And actually the veteran affairs, like taking care of all the wounded soldiers that we have, not even counting their disability payments, is also bigger. And to give this some context, like if you were to say, here's all the money we take in taxes, over 30% of it is going to intelligence agencies, the Department of Defense, and Veterans Affairs. Okay?
Wait, 30%?
Of every tax dollar is going to that, right? 25% of every tax dollar is going for interest on the national debt. So a quarter of the budget, like if we had a balanced budget, a quarter of the budget would be interest payments, on stuff we already spent and consumed, So that makes the real budget way higher, right? And then you have to ask, like, why? Like, what are we getting for this enormous budget, right? Well, we lost the last two wars, By the way, I don't think those numbers even include the military aid we send to Ukraine, But we lost the last two wars. Like, why did we lose them? What happened? But also, like, what are we getting in the sense of, like, I mentioned before, like, if you look at the number of aircraft carrier battle groups we have like an insane number. And there's the possibility they're getting ready to become obsolete. We bought way too many and they may be worthless soon, and that's kind of, that's where I was coming at. So this Ukraine war has been interesting because there's a lot of information that comes from people who've been on the front lines that somehow it's like different than a normal war where you could like somehow squash your veterans from like doing YouTube videos about what they did, Part of it's because a lot of the veterans from the Ukraine war are actually foreign nationals. There's actually like a foreign legion in Ukraine. So like if you're American or British or whatever and you want to go fight in Ukraine, you actually put you in the foreign legion, And a lot of these guys come back from that. And a lot of the guys who go join that are veterans. RFK's son did it, But they come back and they just talk about the warfare that's happening, right? And some of the weird things coming out of this are that drones have become such a big part of warfare. And I don't mean drones like the big type of Predator drones the U.S. used in Afghanistan, but like itty bitty, like almost like hobby drones that like they've had to change all their bunkers. Like you have to have a twisted entrance to your bunker with like a big curtain on the front to stop the drone from literally flying into the bunker and killing everyone, Wow. The tanks that Russia is using, they're calling them turtle tanks. You can look them up on YouTube or whatever, but basically they're taking plywood shells and putting them around these Russian tanks to the point they can't really move the turret anymore. They only can move the tank gun a few degrees because they've put plywood turtle shells on the tanks. Just try to get those drones a couple feet further away if they're going to blow up, right? And they're issuing on both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, because they're both using these drones, they're issuing shotguns to the guys because they're kind of shooting drones like skeet, like they're being chased by drones and their only real defense would be a shotgun, which is not a great level of defense. So now some more information's come out that Ukraine has put out, about like how the drones are being used and stuff. And essentially this is what's happening. And this is kind of the new nightmare of war that we all need to know about, I think, because I think it could change terrorism. It could change our national defense. It's just happening in real time. Is essentially guys are going to the front who are drone pilots. They're getting deep within bunkers, so they're well protected. And they've got like, 20 or 50, somewhere between 20 and 50 drones for the day, and they're launching them. And essentially these are like what you think of as like a hobby drone with a stick of dynamite on it. Right. And they just crash into things. Right. So they're like on the hunt and finding like trucks and tanks and bunkers and even individual men who are soldiers and chasing them down. Right. And there's a lot of footage that's really scary and really like sci-fi right now, where you're seeing men run as fast as they can and jump and hide behind things while a drone is chasing them. And then the drone catches them and it's all over, and you're seeing it from the point of view of the drone. And these drones are being piloted,
Yeah.
So why am I bringing this up? It's not just like, hey, here's new horror of war, but how was the U.S. defeated in Afghanistan? We were defeated two ways. One is we have no vision on how to build a new country. But the other way we're defeated was fertilizer bombs. And when someone can spend a few $100s and cause you millions of dollars of damage, like get 1,000 to 1 return on their investment, you're not going to win. Like a fertilizer bomb that blew up a Humvee with like 4 or 5 Marines in it, those 4 or 5 Marines live because the Humvee's but they live disabled lives for the rest of their lives, and we are going to pay for their disability. There's the human cost, but there's also all the just literal economic cost.
How much was the Humvee? Yeah.
Yeah, the Humvee was way more expensive than the fertilizer bomb.
Yeah.
Taking care of these men for the rest of their lives is insanely expensive. And we did it for 20 years, and now we are still going to pay the cost of that, and your children are going to pay the cost of that war that we lost. Right?
Just you're it's good those men survived you. It a little bit just you're sounding like
I'm just saying, like,
that's lamentable, but I don't think you believe
war
that.
at some level is economic, and we're losing it.
There's like a bad,
you know.
Yeah. What you're saying makes me think of I have a friend who like produces videos, you know, and he knew someone that was like making the show, and there was traveling and stuff, and he was like bringing this 15-man crew everywhere, you know, to film and produce this show, because that's kind of how one does it, you know. And just with the new technology that is available, my friend was like, hey, I can replace your 15-man crew and give you a better show.
Right.
And he's doing that, you know.
This is what Silicon Valley calls disruptive technology. Like, it disrupts the economics of everything that's been before it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what
so it's funny to think, but yeah, like if you're stuck in a thing like we need to do the $1 billion solution, if you're stuck in that mode.
So what's this mean for the future, right? Like, right now, these drones are piloted, right? Put a little bit of self-driving technology or autonomous software in there, they're not piloted anymore, right? Right now, these drones are being literally made in households in Ukraine. If you essentially make them at a Chinese factory or a big setting factory, the price of these drones is going to go through the floor. Like, right now, I've heard the estimate that they cost the Ukrainian government about $500 a pop. Now, just like compare this for a second. The drone with the stick of dynamite is $500 a pop. It can kill a tank. We gave them our missile system, which was like a shoulder-launched rocket that cost us $700,000 a pop. They're doing the same work with $500. Okay, so we just wasted that whole thing, right? And the tank itself is worth $5 million. So either way, it's a good deal to blow it up with $700,000 or $500. But like, it's crazy that like tanks are going to, I mean, all of this is becoming different, right? And there's at least one Silicon Valley company working on this, and they're doing the obvious idea of like, let's have autonomous submarines that are the size of big plastic toys, you know? And this is a David Goliath situation. Like, the same way that us being defeated by fertilizer bombs was a David Goliath situation, our, you know, aircraft carrier battle groups can be wiped out, you know, if someone drops 10,000 autonomous submarines, and the total cost of that enterprise by the other side will be less than one of our destroyers, you know? And so we've way overinvested. It's ridiculous that our defense spending is equal to the whole world. Like, that, you just need to, everyone needs to take a second and just acknowledge that's ridiculous, right? And it's going to be wasted because we're going to have to reinvent all this stuff, like, soon, you know? And that's corruption, and that's evil. You know, that's not morally neutral, you know? And if you think about it, even from a terrorism standpoint, like, Israel's going to be in trouble. The U.S. is going to be in trouble because, like, you can like have a semi-trailer full of these drones, and if you release them in a city, you'll hit every cafe in the city, you know? And there's no need for a suicide bomber. It's all just destruction, you know? So we're entering into a crazy new world that I don't feel like people are talking about. That's a David Goliath. We're Goliath, and David is, we're all teed up. Like, I'm upset that, like, Vivek Ramaswamy was the presidential candidate who was like, we don't even have defense. Like, look at our like defense budget, and we don't even have a defense. Like, why haven't we invested in like how to prevent ourselves from getting attacked with nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we spend our money on.
Yeah.
You know, like or securing the border would be another example. Like why don't we actually spend our defense budget on defense? You know, so we didn't do that. It appears we wasted it, and we bought way more of everything than anyone ever needed.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one of the funny examples I had is this, like, our military installed a like Gaza aid pier that cost $320 million, and 8 days after it was installed, it like floated away. But I think they have since repaired it. So
yeah, but like we're used to like
wild.
making fun of military misspending.
Yeah.
But this kind of points to the idea that our military budget is literally 10x what it should be.
Yeah.
And we misspent. We keep reinvesting in obsolete weapon systems. And it's just weird. It's just like, it's corruption is what it is.
I think Vivek's question is like, it's like, what are we spending it on? Is, and we have a neighbor in the Air Force who flies a helicopter that flew in Vietnam, which is kind of cool, and it's not as a historical show, like it's like,
I wonder if they replace the engines on those things. Because, like, if you were to drive a car from the 1970s, your maintenance problems would be terrible.
They've, like, replaced the GPS system in the helicopter. They've, like, retrofitted it, in different ways.
But, like, if you told me, hey, here's a muscle car from the 70s, don't worry, I put in a new dashboard, I'd be like, I'm not worried. I'm worried that the engine has no O-rings. It has paper manifolds. You know what I mean?
I think the part that is valuable is the shell of the helicopter, is what I'm understanding.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but it does raise the question, like, what are we paying for? I don't know. I'm really kind of like, I find it tragic because I feel like the corruption element strikes me as very sad,
Stop the war machine. That made you sad. Did that make you more sad?
Yeah. Somehow all this happened without Americans really realizing the scale.
I think that's probably true.
And we're not really defending our people. I don't know. I'm bummed. I wanted to say one more thing. So just war theory is kind of a medieval theory, and it makes some medieval assumptions about warfare. There's no real great way to have a just war when it's a guerrilla warfare. That's kind of not well explained. Like, if you're taking on an opponent that's guerrilla, what do you do, right? Another thing is everything in just war theory requires there to be a discretionary weapon. Meaning, like a sword, it's like the individual soldier has to decide if he's going to kill the guy or not, right? And same's true, you could say, with a rifle. That's not true with a bomb, So things that are indiscretionary weapons, things that would like cause civilian casualties and stuff like that, are not really allowed in just war theory, right? Like, certainly the nuclear weapons we used in World War II are not part of a just war theory. Like, there's no Catholic argument for that we know of. And so it's also, I think Pope Benedict was the one who said, we have to rethink whether or not a just war is even plausible. Which, does that mean we all become pacifists or what? But these autonomous weapon systems that are going to come about are kind of crazy because right now the drones are being piloted by humans. It's going to be like, it's going to get to the point where it's like release the dogs, and we're going to like release 10,000 drones that are not piloted by humans, that are like self-driving drones. And the moral culpability is going to be on the guy who pushes the button to release them, but then he has the reason why they have to be self-driving is because of jamming and things like that. They have to make decisions autonomously because you can't put a human communicating with it. So it's like, it's just going to be another level of kind of crazy, unjust war.
Yeah, well, and I read a critique, and there might be at some level that we want to separate ourselves from that culpability. Like it's like it creates a new problem, right? Of like, how do you control these things? But there's some convenience in being able to blame the machine,
Yeah, like the whole collateral damage idea that the U.S. has used and Israel uses and stuff. It's like, at what point is the collateral damage
Just the damage, yeah.
Bigger than the objective, you know?
Yeah.
They don't seem to have any concept of that, right? But anyway. All right. Depressing podcast.
Can I recommend this book?
Yeah.
We just read this by Fulton Sheen, Way to Happiness. The camera is not catching this well. Anyway, I recommend that book.
I would like... Oh, by the way, our last podcast was received in an interesting way. I didn't think it was a piece of our best work, but I immediately got like 4 text messages of people wanting to give me feedback on the last podcast. That was the Neuralink SpaceX podcast. So feel free to send me feedback. I'm interested. Also, we're always interested in tracking the activities of vampires in our society. So please help us out with that if you've got any questions or concerns or information. So thank you for listening to the Simpleton Podcast. Like, subscribe, and share.
See you later, Clark.
See you later, Laura.